Putin bad news. The Ukraine conflict resolution plan. Even if Vladimir Putin is intent on continuing the war. President Joe Biden, in a speech to the Polish this year, said that Russia would never be able to claim victory in Ukraine. Ukraine must be seen to have won, and Russia's invasion must be seen as a decisive failure, enough to deter other authoritarian powers from launching wars of aggression in the future, for the conflict in Ukraine to end on terms consistent with American interests and ideals. Saying that much is simple. Nonetheless, it prompts a serious inquiry. When it comes to the current stage of a conflict that is likely to persist in some form for many years, how can Ukraine define success, and Russia failure? This question has three distinct possible solutions. Taking back all the territory Russia has unlawfully seized since the first invasion in 2014, including Crimea, is the first and most obvious way for Ukraine to win. That's an awesome possible result. A success is still within reach. And the United States should do everything in its power to support it, including supplying Ukraine with more advanced weapons as it has requested if Congress approves additional funding. However, if we're being completely forthright, we have to admit that Ukraine might not achieve complete military success in the coming year or two. Slowly and painfully, it is gaining ground in its counteroffensive. Even when confronted with cutting-edge Western weapons and strategies, the Russian military has shown remarkable resilience. Russia also has an abundant supply of young men it is willing to sacrifice in this conflict. However, it is unclear whether the United States and its allies will maintain funding for Ukraine's offensive operations for as long as they last. It will be challenging to get the House to approve Vice President Biden's recent request for additional funding for Ukraine, and even then, it would only last until early 2024. Putin is aware that former President Donald Trump, the leading Republican candidate for president next year, would end U.S. support for Ukraine, and that there are others like him in Europe. Putin, not Ukraine, stands to gain from an endless war. Ukraine could theoretically succeed in a second way, too, through diplomatic negotiations. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine proposed a 10-point peace plan earlier this month, which included the withdrawal of all Russian troops from Ukraine, the return of abducted children, and justice for war crimes. 40 countries, including China and the United States, met in Saudi Arabia to discuss the plan. Of course, it would be fantastic if we could reach a settlement based on that proposal. However, Putin's Russia has never used negotiations to end a war. At best, it has frozen conflicts to preserve its options. Russia has shown no inclination to make even the smallest of concessions that would satisfy Ukraine and its allies' minimum demands. Putin will likely keep sacrificing Russians to stay in the fight as long as his military avoids total collapse and he believes there is a chance of political change in the West. Where would we be by, say, this time next year if Russia is successful in blocking both options A and B? Should Ukraine and its allies just keep going until 2025, or later, and hope for a breakthrough? The very stability of the international system is at stake, not just the survival of Ukraine. The outcome of elections in Western countries, such as the United States, would become contingent on factors beyond our control, making success a lottery. We have no authority to order a ceasefire in Ukraine until the country is secure, but we also cannot insist that the Ukrainian people continue to fight at all costs.